Hi everyone, welcome to another meeting of our Creative English Club. Today our guest is a writer, a content writer, a copywriter, and also a comedian. And we're so happy to receive Rosemary in the session. And without further ado, let's get started. Welcome everyone again. For those of you who are new here, our Creative English Club is a space where we create connections with people from all over the world. Our main goal here is to practice our English skills so we can connect with people wildly throughout the globe. So it's very nice to have you here. Just briefly about myself, I'm Mari. You're going to be me hosting the sessions every week, and we're just gonna be receiving a special guest with each week. Today our guest is gonna be Rosemary, but we'll get to her in a second. Briefly about me, I'm currently in Canada, so I'm doing an internship in marketing at American Express in Toronto, and I'm just gonna ask for our lovely mediators to come on here and introduce themselves before we get started with the talk. So if we can pull up Bruna here so she can introduce herself.
Hi, Mari. Hi, guys. Well, my name is Bruna. I'm a designer and art direction student. I'm based here in Curitiba, Brazil, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Amazing. Thank you, Bruna. And next, Hayana, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Hayana. I live in Curitiba and I am social media and community manager at Wiser Educação. I'm a little bit nervous because it's been a long time since the last time I talked with someone in English, but I'm also super excited for being here.
Amazing. And don't be nervous, we're all here to learn, so you're doing great. Next up, Rodriguinho.
Okay, sorry. I have a little trouble with my microphone. I am Rodriguinho Camargo. I am a copywriter and I live in Curitiba. I work at Market Data via MLNR, and it's a pleasure talking with everyone today. So let's start this.
Amazing. Can I have Henrique on the stage, please?
Hey everybody, I'm very glad to be here with you. My name is Henrique Lia and I'm a copywriter. Right now I live in São Paulo and I work as a freelancer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henrique. And last but not least, Luisa.
Hi, I'm Luisa and I'm a student at advertising, and I'm really excited to be here today from learning all the things we have and discussing all the things we have.
Amazing. Thank you, Luisa. And now I want to bring to the stage our esteemed guest, Rosemary, so she can properly introduce herself. I know everyone has looked at her bio already, but she's going to let us know what her career is all about. So, Rose, if you can come to the stage, please. Awesome.
Hi. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Live from New York, it's Rosie. You don't have to call me Rosemary, Rosie Works. So I am a writer, copywriter, long form content writer, and comedian. So a lot of different things, but it all has kind of worked out in my career. And I'm excited to just talk about all of it since it's not your typical career for a writer in advertising or marketing. So I actually started writing in college doing plays. I wrote like plays and musicals and stuff like that. And when I graduated, I wanted to do something creative still. And I landed at an agency. They're an Omnicom agency, Sereno Coin, and they do Broadway shows. So like Lion King and Aladdin. And I was just kind of a general marketing assistant because I had no portfolio to really show other than plays. So I couldn't really like write yet. So I went there and I learned everything there is to learn about the advertising world. And I started working with our creative director of copy. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me about copywriting and what that's all about. And I really enjoyed the experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how everything works. I learned how you buy ads. So now I know all of that too. And then I moved on to the Interactive Advertising Bureau, aka the IAB. They're all over the world. And I kind of just wanted a different pace from agency life. It was a lot for me. As you probably know, America is really bad with like work-life balance, especially a few years ago. Now we're a little bit better. But I wanted some more life back in my life. So I went to the IAB and I got a crash course then in digital advertising. So how the Boots ads like follow you around the internet, and how advertising just works online, which is a very complicated thing. And I thought I'd never actually learn it. So to this day, I'm very proud of myself for actually learning how all these things work. And while I was doing that, I started freelancing because I really liked copywriting. I really just love writing in general. I wanted to be more creative. So I started freelancing on the side, and I just had I worked on Fiverr, which I'm not sure if that's international, but in America, Fiverr is pretty standard as a place to start as a freelancer. You kind of just put your stuff up, you put how much you will like the price for everything, word limits, stuff like that. And then people will get in touch with you asking you to write certain things. So I wrote a lot of like random bios for people, like some advertising stuff here and there. I actually wrote some guy's best man speech to say at his friend's wedding, which I don't know if he ever told his best friend that, but he wanted to sound funny. So he hired me to write it for him. It was stuff like that. So it was kind of like ran the gamut. And that's when Human reached out to me, Human Security, a cybersecurity company who specializes in ad fraud, but does a whole bunch of other things too, like credit card fraud, all that kind of stuff. So they reached out to me about being a content writer and writing long form content on ad fraud and other types of fraud. So they wanted their brand to sound more relatable, more human, and just have a little bit more of a personality, which is why they brought me on, which is very, very rare that a cybersecurity company would even be interested in anything like that. But they were, and it's worked out. I've been there for almost 3 years now. And I got to set like our brand tone and voice, our inspiration, everything people need to know to write in the human security voice. I got to put together and own. And now I kind of run our blog. I write long form content, short form content, really anything you could possibly imagine. That's part of the written word I will do. I really enjoy it. Again, another learning experience. I never thought I'd be learning about, how hackers get into people's accounts, but now I know. So it just makes me, I feel like more of like a well-rounded and rich writer with all of this knowledge. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I use my comedy wherever I can. The pandemic has kind of put my stand-up career on hold a little bit just because comedy clubs closing down, all that fun stuff. So getting back into it and getting back on stage, and storytelling is a part of everything we write, right? So comedy is very similar and helps me in that way. So they help each other out. So yeah, that's about me.
That's amazing, and thanks for the run through. I'm sure like we could talk about like just your career alone for like 10 minutes or more, because there's just like so much to cover. But it's very nice to see like trajectory, like just your path and just like how different it is from our standard like agency, like you said. Yeah, that's very interesting, especially like the cybersecurity like company, like you said, like bringing the human aspect of it. That's just not something you see every day. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, I always like to say it sounds so weird to have like a comedian walks into a cybersecurity company. It sounds like a joke.
And I'm glad you can bring like that human aspect to it, because I think you mentioned like in your bio as well, like you just your goal is to just make it like more accessible and human. And like at this point, everything being virtual, we just need that human aspect on the technology, I guess. So it's a very nice thing to aspire to.
Thank you.
And I'm going to call now like Rodriguinho so he can ask his first question.
Hello. I have a doubt, especially the copywriter to copywriter. In Brazil, we have so many comedians and good comedians. And I am a big fan of this kind of art. And what I want to do, what I want to know about you, how is your creative process to compose a stand-up? How is your inspiration for develop this? You inspire in normal things like chat in the work or a barbecue, some normal things for compose, or you prefer write something about more specific topics like I've seen a stand up, your stand up about abortion, so complicated subject. So how is your process about thinking you try to do and make this make compose your stand up about how are the topics for compose these stand ups?
Yeah. Thank you for a question. Yeah, I do have a set about abortion. So it's I hope I made it funny enough. But basically, when I first started doing comedy, I pretty much started with like what was around me at the time. I had just moved to the city, to New York City. I had a very cheap apartment because I had no money, and I was going on dates all the time just to eat. So I started to just kind of take what was around me and start writing sets on that. Um, and just kind of like reading a lot. I also did improv. I was part of an improv team when I moved to the city. And that was really, really helpful in exercising the comedy muscle because it makes you think on your feet. You have to think very clearly and on your feet and be able to like articulate it clearly. So improv definitely helped with that. So it started with like everything that was around me. And then it moved more towards things that I really personally care about, which is where that abortion set comes in. I remember that day very specifically because I had a whole set planned about what I was going to do. I had a completely different 10-minute stand-up set that I wanted to do. And then I was just so frustrated at the beginning of the day with everything that was going on and honestly continued to go on after that in America, that I just scrapped my whole set day of and wrote that like in a fury of anger. And I wrote it. I tried to memorize it to the best of my ability. And then I went up on stage that night. So honestly, it's just like the emotions of it is what fueled me to write something about it and to like warp jokes and stuff around like how ridiculous it is that we still debate abortion in America. So that's kind of like where that comes from. I like to go on stage and talk about things that are bigger than just me. If I'm going to be able to have that platform, then I would like to maybe along the way change a mind or two. So yeah, it's a different process. You'll probably hear a lot about how like Jerry Seinfeld, for instance, he wrote 2 hours worth of jokes every day. He would sit down and write 2 hours worth of jokes. That doesn't really work for me. I really try to be that kind of person. But really for me, it's getting out there and just being inspired by what's around me and talking to people and talking with my friends. A lot of the time I practice my jokes out on my friends and they have no idea because I just need someone to bounce off of. But yeah, it's getting out there, getting the experiences, and then translating that onto paper. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, this is so nice because I am a copywriter and I love stupid things, silly things, or jokes and other things like that. And I 4 times I tried compose stand up, but I don't have discipline to this. So I try to understand more about this for one day restarted this and try, I don't know, make a stand up and record something to YouTube or Instagram because today in each corner is possible to find good comedians and new comedians. In Brazil, it's a huge country with so many comedians. I don't know if you follow some comedians from Brazil, but there is a good place to you discover more and study more about comedian also.
Yeah. I think that like if you are incorporating jokes or anything into your copywriting, you're basically a comedian too, and never stop doing that because I feel like that's what makes people different is when they're able to take something that is typically serious or whatever, and be able to kind of flip it on its head and make it funny. That is a skill that so few people have. So, and it's a skill you can develop. I don't want anyone to think that like you need to be like born funny or like born talented. That's not true. You can develop those skills. You just have to work at it. And as far as like the discipline to make it happen, I'll be the first person to tell you that I have like the worst discipline with it. Like if I'm not inspired, I cannot sit down and write. I have nothing to give. So for me, it's always just, I sit on my notebook every day. I try to, and I write whatever I want. It does not need to be funny. I don't put pressure on myself to make things funny when I'm just like writing in my journal. And then from there, when I'm writing, I sometimes just like get into little tangents and I'm like, oh, that's a little interesting. That could be kind of funny there. I can start maybe I am inspired by this little interaction I had earlier that day. Just like giving yourself permission to not have to be funny all the time is just a huge weight off your shoulders.
Thanks for these tips. I will try. I try writing more and thinking less.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your question, Rodriguinho. And I love everything you said, Rosie. Like, I don't see how we can expect creative minds to work in a very dictator organized way. Like, I feel like those things contradict each other more often than not. And it's very inspiring to hear about, like, when you're passionate about something, like I mentioned with the abortion side, like, you're just like feeling it, like it's gonna flow like way better than when you try to force yourself into something. So exactly. Thank you for like everything that you shared. And next up we have Hyena for her question.
All right, Rosie, considering your experience on the creativity market of New York and also being the first female guest here at the English Club, I would like to know more about your journey as a woman in this area. Have you ever felt like left behind at some point or faced problems just for being born as a woman?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's interesting. Where I started in my career, it was very like 50-50 at a creative agency, like especially for Broadway shows, like it was mostly gay men and women, like that's who was there. And it was wonderful. And I didn't really like see how women could be left behind. And it wasn't until I started growing up a little bit and just going through my career and talking to women that I started to see how we can be held to a different standard than everybody else. I remember at one of my jobs, like if I spoke up a lot and I called out people for, maybe not, they promise something, they never give it to you, or they're not living to like their expectations either. They're kind of just like trying to skate by. And someone like me, I can't handle that. I need to say something. So like, I will always be like, no, by you not doing your thing, I'm not able to do my best job. And that's not fair. Some people don't like that. And I learned that very quickly that some people, some men in particular, can be very fragile when it comes to women speaking up for themselves, especially in the creativity world. We look at creativity sometimes, like us as a society, if you zoom out, sometimes people think creativity is like emotional or fluffy or not like real or not like a realistic journey. Like they see creatives as people with like their heads in the sky all the time. And that's not the case. And being a woman, sometimes you have to like doubly go against that, if that makes sense. Now I'm at a cyber company and it is majority men. And that was a very new experience for me. I kind of knew that was going to happen just given the industry and cybersecurity and tech in general. I think it's like 75% male and 25% women. So I knew that was going to be a new dynamic. And I learned a lot about standing up for myself and not taking everything super personally. I'm one of those people who will take everything personally. So I had to learn very quickly that sometimes people don't even realize what they're saying is offensive or wrong or makes you feel some kind of way. They don't even realize it. So being able to like take a deep breath, stand up for yourself, and not let it like get to you every day, which is so hard to do, right? and just try to like come at it with a more like clear and even mind will make more progress happen. That's a really great question. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you, Rosie. I think that is very important for us to know more about this scenario when it comes about another culture. Anyway, thank you for your answer.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Diana, and I love how you spoke about it. Really, I feel like we're never gonna like really move forward if we don't speak up like when it's needed. So it's very nice. And what you said about like writing plays first and like having a different perspective makes a lot of sense. I feel like even in the creative field, like just like agencies and copywriting and everything, sometimes we get stuck in a bubble because it's not like as strict of a field as engineering or like tech security, like I mentioned. So it's very nice for us to recognize that we still have like a long way to go. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And next we have Luisa. Luisa, can you come up to the stage? Awesome.
Hi. So my question is making a link to what Rodrigo asked. How is the link between comedy and your writing? Does the creativity comes in this moment? Does it helps your writing doing this stand-up comedy? Is how it is this connection between comedy and work in your experience?
Yeah, they're very connected, surprisingly. When I first started at my current job at Human Security, I was not expecting to be using my comedy chops as much as I do. Basically, the way that like that kind of process works is I kind of evaluate what the like copywriting exercise is, like what is the assignment for my job, who is the audience, who do they like, how do they like being talked to, right? And then seeing like what are like some weird connections I can make, like what is something that they will be very surprised to hear from a tech company. A lot of times with copywriting, we kind of like go back to like commonly known phrases and play with those a little bit. And I like to start there. So I take like a phrase that everyone would know, or I mean, I'm sure in Brazil, you guys have way different phrases than we do in America. But, you know, just like things that you would say offhand and not even realize that it's like a phrase that everyone knows. And play with that a little bit and see how you can warp that and make it funny and make it unexpected. But it's interesting because it is tech at the end of the day. So you can't make like too many jokes. You have to balance it. And the balance is very important, because the way I like to say start a long form blog is that I will maybe start with something funny, interesting, personal, like something you wouldn't expect from a tech blog, and then get into the tech, like connect the dots between something personal and funny with this like very hard, you know, techy thing, and then close out again, like connecting it and putting it all together. But yeah, the like connection between comedy and like content writing and copywriting, honestly, it's just made each of them better. Like sometimes I'll write something that I'm like, oh, this would be a good like set for a stand-up set. And I'll be like, oh wait, maybe I could actually use that at work. You just kind of, the more creative you are, like the more you like exercise your creativity, and no matter the way, whether it's comedy or painting or you know, playing an instrument, the more you can just like exercise all the different ways of being creative, the more like easier I feel like brainstorming and like getting down like the words to the paper will become.
Because I think that when we think about security, we think in a formal communication. And when we think about comedy, we think in a formal communication. So I think the process is a little bit different, because in one you have the limit of the client, and the other you don't have the limit of the client, because it's yourself, put yourself at risk, putting yourself in front of the people. So I think this is the trick between them, the both of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say, like, it could be very easy to like write copy for a fun brand, right? For something like I don't know, Gatorade or like some type of bubble gum or something like that. That could, like, that in and of itself is pretty fun. You could basically write whatever you want. Yeah, they have brand guidelines, but there's not any like really guardrails. With where I'm at in my career at a tech company, there are very, very clear guardrails and very clear, like, this is my sandbox and I really shouldn't step out of it. But sometimes you can start convincing people, like, just like a little toe at a time to step out of the sandbox. I feel like when I first started at my job, I tried to like go like full speed in, like, here, like, let's make this super funny and that and this and that thing. And I realized like I needed to rein it back and convince everyone around me that this was a good idea. So I pumped the brakes a little bit, and I slowly started incorporating a little more personality here, a little more humor there. And after a while, I started to become more trusted, and my colleagues were more into it. And then it became, okay, like, this is our brand voice. We love this. We love, stepping out of the sandbox that the tech world has put us in. So sometimes those guardrails, like, as annoying as they can be helpful, because you have to force yourself to be a little more creative and a little more strategic with what you're trying to do.
Yes, that's exactly the point, because they are so different. I can't imagine like a security company writing with Joe, so you have to mediate between them. Thank you for your answer.
That's a great question, Lisa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I love that, Rosie, especially because I've seen so many creatives that have come from a more like artistic path, and they ended up like in agencies or doing brand work because it's just like, a more, I guess, like profitable career, or because they're trying to like, have that day job. And a lot of people get like demotivated by those constrictions and everything like that, keeps them from running their creativity wild. And I love how you said that it's like a process, but you can get there. Do you have any like, bullet point tips for people to pitch their ideas for a company if they really believe that it can work on the brand's favor?
Yeah. So I feel like I pitch something new to my team like every day because I'm always coming up with like some weird ideas. So how I like to go about it, if it's something big, like a big campaign or like a very impactful blog idea, what I'll do is I'll get all of the data together. For me in tech, that's king. Data is king. So I do a lot of research on what other companies are saying or how they're approaching this topic or whatever. I'll just do my research. Like, I use eMarketer a lot. And eMarketer has like a lot of data on like how people like respond to ads and stuff like that. So I do my data research, I dump it all into a doc, and then I kind of start outlining a little bit or putting together goals. So if it's like a campaign, I'll put together like, this is the goal of the campaign. This is exactly how I would dream of executing it. And here's why, because Forbes is saying this, and this big publication is saying that, and our competitor is actually doing something like this. I do a lot of research to back up the idea. And then usually I'll say, yes, it sounds a little weird. Yes, it sounds a little different than what we're used to, but like, why not try it and see if it works? If it doesn't work, then now we know not to go in that direction. And 9 times out of 10, I will say it does work. Like, I've rarely had ideas that I really like put the work into research and bulletproof that haven't in the end been accepted and actually gone and done really well. We have a campaign at my job that we call Bot Friday. And it's basically talking about how bots take gifts around the holiday season, so Black Friday in America. And we had this idea years ago about Bot Friday. And every year I've kind of been like pushing the envelope of it and making it a little more weird, a little more different, a little more something. And every year it gets it's, widely accepted at our company. Our salespeople love it. It's a little more B2B, but it lets us have some fun. in that sandbox that everyone is in. Our competitors are all in it, but we stand out because we have this like fun, different creative campaign going on. So I hope that answered your question.
It definitely did. That's amazing advice. I love it. And really putting the work into it, as long as you have like the arguments backing it up, especially like data, I guess. That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And next person we have Henrique.
Hello.
Hi.
So, Rosemary, we would like to, still talking about comedy, I have watched a performance at Risk in which you talk about a syndrome that you have, Poland syndrome. And I love the fact that you were so light about it. And I could really see your struggles, but I wasn't like, oh, poor Rosemary, what a pity. I was like, oh, what a nice way to overcome your obstacles. So could you please talk a little bit about this experience, and most specifically about the power of humor in storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I say I'm a comedian, and at my heart, I'm a storyteller. So a lot of my sets will actually just be stories, which in like a comedy club world looks really weird, and people are very like, what? Like, what's going on right now? This isn't like joke. Whereas something with Risk, I've worked with the podcast a couple of times, and they're storytelling at the base of it. So whether it's funny or not funny, it doesn't matter. They just want the stories, and they want them to be true and risky. For that, I would say I've had that story, the one about student government and how the school newspaper did not accept me, even though I was the only one running. That story has been in my mind, obviously, since it happened. And I remember when it happened thinking, one day this will be funny to me. And one day I'll be able to make something out of this. Like right now, it's not funny. Right now, I'm very hurt, but one day it will be. And I had tried so many iterations of that story, and I could never nail it. I remember I graduated college, my first year, I started writing comedy stuff. I tried that story out in a different format, a different wording. It didn't land the way I wanted to land. Still didn't feel right. I went back to the drawing board like a year or two later. Still wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And then I just kind of put it on the back burner. I was like, maybe this story is not meant to be like told in this wide, in a wider context. And then Risk had started doing in-person shows again. And I wanted to do a show in person so badly. Like I missed the connection you can have with an audience. I've done a couple like shows over Zoom or over webinar, and it's like not the same at all. It's very weird because you don't hear any laughter, so you're just hoping people enjoy it. So I saw that they were looking for stories, and I was like, you know what if I pitched this and just forced myself to get it right and just force it on myself? And so I did. They loved it. And then the process began figuring out how I should actually tell this story. And I think giving it a rest for so long and letting it, just breathe and not put my pressure on myself to get it right at that time, just letting it be on the back burner for a few years and letting my skills become even better helped me in the end write the story in the way that I definitely wanted it to be told. I think maybe I was too close to the story still once I graduated. It still hurt almost. It's still I still wasn't over it. So I needed a few years literally to get over what had happened and to be able to actually tell the story. I actually worked with a story coach with Risk. By the way, I think they accept pitches. If anyone ever wants to get into live storytelling, you should definitely reach out to them. They're awesome. They link you with a story coach if your story is accepted, and you go through with someone who, is not you. They don't have your experience. They're just hearing exactly what you're telling them, and they guide you to make the story even more interesting. Really make the stakes clear, make it more emotional, or make it give it more feeling, especially with the senses. Something I learned from doing the Risk podcast is that when you're listening to a story on audio, you need to really tune into how everything felt in that moment. So I talk about in that story how sweaty I was because I was, but also is to put the person listening in my shoes. I was really sweaty. I was wearing a blazer. I couldn't put my hair up because it wouldn't look professional. Just like dumb shit like that. And I kind of just put all of those feelings into the story, and that let the audience like come along on the journey with me. So I'm not like, you're not telling the story to them, they're on the journey too. And when I did that story live, I actually had done it a few months prior at just a small show, not recorded, nothing. It was just a place that I had done some stories before to try out, and I wanted to try this out in this new format and see if people actually liked it. So I did it, and I was stunned by the audience. The audience was literally screaming at me about like how like, oh my God, I can't believe that. Like I was so overwhelmed by the response while I was on stage. I was like, wow, I was not expecting this. That it gave me more fuel to really get it right and to do it on the Risk stage. And it worked out in the end. It's probably one of my favorite stories that I've written, and it used to be my most hated.
Nice, thank you very much. I think that this is an amazing ability to laugh at our mistakes.
Yeah,
And that's
you gotta.
Another thing that I would like to ask you. You attended the Canada Lion School Creative Academy, and I think that this is an amazing experience, and an experience of a lifetime, because they only select 30 creatives from all around the world. So could you please tell us about this experience and share something that you saw there, and you said like, oh, I need to tell everyone about it.
Yeah. That was easily the best experience I've ever had in my adult life, and maybe ever. I was telling someone this yesterday. I still have dreams almost daily about the Cannes Lion Creative Academy. It's like my brain is still in the south of France. So I was honestly stunned when I was accepted. I know that Cannes Lions really they champion agencies and they champion like B2C creative work. So when I was accepted, I was totally stunned. I cried, of course. I was just so excited to get there and learn from creatives. At my job, it's just me. I just hired a writer, so now we have another writer at least, and our designer, and that's all the creatives we have. So I just wanted to be around other creatives so badly. And I went in just wanting to learn everything, like no competition, no nothing. I just want to go and learn from people who, in my mind, they're so much better than me. I don't know what they know. They are much smarter. I feel like that's a humble way to go into an experience like that, where it's like, I actually know nothing. So please teach me your ways. And with that experience, I met so many people. Like everyone in the academy was just perfect. They were amazing people. And I learned so much from them and from all of the conversations we had. A lot of what I learned was that all of the things that you do in your life, all your hobbies and anything you do outside of work informs your job. It informs how you do your creative job. Liking skateboarding, for instance, one of the guys was an avid skateboarder. That can inform your creative experience. You have a completely different view on, traveling. It's just different. If you like video games, for instance, I'm a huge gamer. I love to stream on Twitch sometimes, and that it all can inform my career and my writing skills. Also, on top of that, some companies are looking for you to have knowledge on maybe a very specific thing. So if you say like, oh yeah, I love video games and I love doing like VR metaverse stuff, companies may be looking for someone who really loves that so they can be at the forefront of that conversation. So basically, like everything you do can be research for your actual job. So the next time you sit down and play video games for a few hours, tell yourself that. And the second thing that someone told me that I've been keeping to myself a lot is that you do not need to accept the pressure that people may be putting on you. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to do the best work every time. And that's a lot to live up to for a person. No one can be the best at all times. So just kind of like releasing myself from that pressure and being like, I don't need to actually. I don't need to be perfect at it. I don't want to accept this pressure on me. It's the past few weeks, I would say, have been a lot easier for me at work because I've kind of just like let go of this pressure. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us. And thanks, Enrique, for your questions.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to call up Bruna next.
Hello, Rosie.
Hi.
Lots of Brazilians have the goal to live abroad, especially in New York. So could you share with us about your lifestyle there and how do you enjoy the city? And is there somewhere in particular you find inspiring?
That's a great question. So I'm originally from New York. I grew up on Long Island. So I would go into the city a lot. I had a lot of family who lived in Manhattan. So for me, moving back to the city moving back to New York was just very exciting to finally like live the New York City life. I will say at first it was very hard, as most people will say. It's like a very hard life to get used to because it is very fast paced and it is very competitive. There's a lot of people here who are very good at what they do. And sometimes it'll feel like the city is knocking you down. But I always like the perseverance is what makes New Yorkers so unique in my mind, is that despite all of, the stuff that we may deal with, like a rat running over your feet, which happened to me before, that all makes you a stronger person and you're able to kind of like deal with things a lot easier. So right now, I live in Manhattan. I love it here. I've always lived in Manhattan. I've never lived in like Brooklyn or Queens or anything, but I have lots of friends who do. It's very easy for me to get to my job if I ever wanted to go to the office. I don't usually because I think I work better from home. It's just easier for me to focus on writing. But if I needed to, it's a 20-minute train ride to the office. I will say that it's really hot right now. So if you're moving to New York in the summer, have multiple air conditioners if possible. But it's a fast-paced life, but you don't have to do everything. I think a lot of people, when they move here, they feel the need to have to extend themselves so much and like go to every show or go to every bar hangout or whatever. You don't need to. That will all come with time. Like, preserve your energy. You do not need to do everything all at once. And just be open to meeting new people. I think like people who move here without like friends here or anyone really here, I mean, I have no idea what that's like. A lot of my friends from college moved to New York right after college with me. So I had built-in friends here. But I made so many friends from my first job. I'm still best friends with all of them now. And now I'm friends with their friends and all that stuff. So just be like open to like meeting new people. And plus, you know me now. So if you ever come to the city, you now have a built-in friend in New York. I am here.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. I loved your story.
Thank you.
Amazing. And I know like a lot of people might take you up on that, just having like, a friendly face. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah. And then we're going to bring in some questions that we've been receiving from our transmission on YouTube. But before I do that, I just wanted to ask a question for myself. You've mentioned how it's been hard to do like stand-ups and everything since, like COVID hit. I can imagine it's like a very tricky like market to be in right now. Have you ever thought about expanding your platform since you've already been on Twitch and on podcasts? Like maybe, I know TikTok is big on comedy right now or something along those lines.
Yeah, so it's actually very funny. I downloaded TikTok for the first time 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
It took me that long to get, not because I didn't want to. People like kept saying that they would spend so much time on there. Actually, people from TikTok came to talk to our creative academy at Cannes, and they said that the average person on TikTok spends over a movie's worth of time on TikTok a day. So I was like, I don't want to lose that time. But I did feel this like kind of like creative itch. I'm like, it feels so easy. Everyone's on TikTok and it feels like it's very easy to create this kind of content. And I've learned it's not. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But I have enjoyed it. I like put up like a TikTok maybe like a week and a half ago or something. So I'm like trying it out. I am on Twitch too, which that was actually my original answer to like, comedy is really weird right now. There's a lot of like COVID waves happening. As y'all probably know, New York was hit really, really hard at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was very scary. So we're all kind of like scarred for life from it. So I was just like, I want something that can allow me to like talk to an audience and joke around and like, just talk without having to be at a comedy club. So something that was pandemic proof, and that's what Twitch was for me. But yeah, started expanding into TikTok. I've done a couple reels on Instagram. It's one of those things where it's like, if I'm not inspired, I got nothing. So I need to be more consistently inspired. Don't we all?
That's so true. But that's nice. You're, like broadening your horizons right now, and that's super fun. I'm glad to hear like you're on Twitch. And to everyone watching, like you can just like check Rosie's socials. I'm sure they'll linked into like our posts and everything, like especially the podcast if you haven't heard it already. It's always nice to make those connections. So very nice. I'm gonna pull up a question from YouTube that we got from Demi. She asked like about your journey, how it went from working with something as like creative and like Broadway and Disney, and then like I guess that ties into something that we've already touched upon, but how that has an impact on your more quote unquote like serious job right now. And I guess just to like explore something we haven't touched upon at, if you want to just share also if you ever miss it, and if you have any goals of like maybe transitioning in the future as well.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think how I want to answer this because there's so many ways. Working for Broadway was amazing. I didn't just do Disney shows. I did a whole bunch of them. Those are just the ones I know internationally everyone knows. It was really great to get a firsthand look at like how all of that works, especially from a Broadway perspective. It's a very niche community, and how to work with producers, how to pitch a producer on an idea, all that fun stuff. I will say though, like how working on Broadway has impacted my career. It's actually like really, really incredible because I was doing partnership marketing for Broadway shows. I was reaching out to different companies to partner with us. We actually worked with Amex a whole lot, partnered with Amex on events and stuff. If you've ever flown to New York, if you've ever flown to JFK, you may see like a whole takeover of a Broadway show, like by the baggage claim. I used to do stuff like that. So it taught me how to be like strategic and how to like look at a show, at a product, at a whatever strategically, which I think has informed my creativity a lot. Also, the experience working for Broadway gave me the confidence to be a writer today. When I was brought in on 2 projects that like totally blew my mind. So the first one was pitching Mean Girls on Broadway. Our company did not win the pitch. However, I was brought in to work on some copy lines for the show. And this was like my first actual writing assignment for a company. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. My boss didn't want me spending too much time on it because it was like billable hours and all that fun stuff. And so I worked on it, and they actually chose one of my lines to pitch to Tina Fey. And I couldn't believe it. I wasn't at the pitch, of course. It was just like all the head honchos that were there. It was her and Lorne Michaels from SNL. And the next day, I remember just being like, I wonder how it went. Like, this is so, they like went to 30 Rock, like where they film SNL to pitch them and everything. And our creative director comes running over and he's like, Rosemary, you're not going to believe this. Tina Fey laughed at your line and said, "That's funny." And to this day, it has been like the fuel.
The highest compliment. Oh my
The
God.
highest compliment. And it sucks because they didn't pick us, and so they couldn't use the line anywhere. So that's why it's like not on my portfolio or whatever. It's now just like a really fun story I had.
But it's a great story.
Right? I thought about for a while making my website just like Tina Fey said I was funny, and then like my contact info.
It would sell. Like, it drives the point home. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, it fuels me to be where I am today. I do miss it a lot. I mean, I love entertainment. I love Broadway. I was a musical theater kid, so like it's very, near and dear to my heart. So maybe one day I'll go back to it. But I like, spreading my wings and seeing all the different things and all the different opportunities right now.
That's amazing. And I'm like a theater kid myself. I know that Tami, who has the question, is too. So we'll definitely like be fangirling a little bit and just like geeking out because it all sounds so amazing. Like big names, big stages. That's awesome. Yeah. And then we have one more question from Flavio. So I guess we're gonna pull up here for you to read. But he's asking, based on your experience as a comedian and a versatile marketing like professional, do you think it's possible to combine planning and improvisation also in marketing? That's a great question.
Oh, definitely. That's a great question, Flavia. Yeah, I think having the experience of marketing, partnership marketing, all that kind of stuff, like made me like broaden my mind. So for instance, when I get an assignment or we're thinking about putting a piece of copy somewhere, whatever, my immediate thought is like, why are we putting it there? Who is there? What type of person will look at it? Like, is that really like the format that we want to go for? It made me ask a lot more questions that maybe if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have. But now I understand like, oh, why the digital person bought that spot on, that newsletter, for instance. It just made me more well-rounded. And honestly, I think more valuable as a creative because I'm not just a words person. I can also be a strategy person. I can talk to you about strategy, or I can brainstorm with you and, have pie in the sky ideas that will still be relevant for us. Like I understand the boundaries of marketing and comms. So yeah, I think it's great to know a little bit of everything. I highly suggest.
Amazing. And in my experience, like no matter how much you plan, you're always going to have a little improv at the end there. So definitely things that can play together. Yeah, I'm just going to call our mediators back here on the screen. So if anyone has any final questions, if anyone have questions on the chat as well, like whoever is watching us on YouTube, feel free to send in the last touch points. So I know Rodriguinho has a question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm considering me a little bit a Chandler Bing. Do you know Chandler Bing from Friends?
Yes. Yeah.
He also make jokes to dealing with the complicated situation. So my question is for you: humor and comedy are for you a kind of shield or way to overcome or dealing complicated situations in your life?
Absolutely. That is such a good question. I really do feel like comedy is kind of part of like my therapy almost. My therapist and I talk about it all the time. But it helps me take complicated or situations that make me feel some kind of way, that make me feel very upset or whatever, and be able to look at them and just like kind of put, funny ears on it, or, like it kind of helps like understand it and helps me like get through whatever that was. As far as comedy as a shield, absolutely. I feel like if you were ever picked on as a kid, you are probably a little bit of a comedian now because you learned how to, when people came at you with, saying something mean to you on the playground, you were able to, quip something back to them, and it became a shield. So for sure, I was always that kid, like the funny kid, I always had something a little funny or dumb to say. just to kind of like shield myself from people making fun of me or whatever. So yeah, comedy is healing for me.
Yeah, thank you for this, because for me, I try using humor like this every time. When I was child, I suffered kind of bullying. It's normal, I think. Unfortunately, it's a terrible thing, but it happens many times. And I make the humor and the comedy a way to escape for these problems in my life.
Definitely. I do the same exact thing. You're in good company.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Does anyone have any more questions before we move on to the more English aspect of this session? No, we're all good. Okay, perfect. I'm just like waiting a little bit for the slides to share. But just so everyone knows, like just a disclaimer that I always like to post here is that I'm not an English teacher or professor or anything of the sort. I'm just picking up from our conversation interesting words or expressions that Rosie used, so we can try to incorporate them on our vocabulary. And Rosie, if you have any comments like on all the expressions, they're going to be more than welcome here as well.
Cool.
So I'm just going to share my screen. Always a little pause now in the virtual world. Perfect. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So just first, I'll like starter to land on. So we may hear that expression as like the plane is landing. So that's something that I think we are very familiar with. But to land on something, it's more commonly used for things that are not physical. So we can say, for example, I've landed on script writing. So I ended up there. You're not actually landing on something. It's just a sort of expression that we can use for many different contexts. A crash course, so it's an intensive and learning in a short time. I think Rosie mentioned one she did. So it's always nice for us to be familiar with types of courses. I know it can be very confusing, especially when it comes to secondary education, to get to know those sort of like categories. But a crash course would be a course in a short time, going through a subject in a more intensive kind of approach. Well-rounded. I think that's a word that Rosie used a lot, and I love that because it just shows like how like well-rounded she is. But it just means that it covers everything and it's something polished. So if you're going, to be more well-rounded once you have experience in different areas of creativity, you're gonna end up like having more general knowledge of a little bit of everything. To wrap, I know that some like we are familiar with the word, at least most of us are. So it's to envelop something in something else. But a very common expression that we use is can't wrap my head around it. It doesn't really make sense if you just translate it from word to word, but it just means that you can't really comprehend something. And I think that's something interesting for us to point out. They, them. I've brought this up in past meetings when we did them in our past English club, but I think it's always nice to mention because it's just something so relevant right now, especially when it comes to writing and copywriting and everything. But we learned them as a plural pronouns, but they can also mean gender neutral. So for example, when you say, when a creative comes up with a joke, they should share it. You're not talking about more than one person, you're talking about one singular person, but you don't have to specify a gender here. And it's much better for you to say they, them than for you to say he or she, because there are people who use the they, them pronouns. So this way you're just like enveloping everyone in the conversation. To say something offhand is just to throwing it out there. So again, an expression, you're not actually talking about anything hand related, but offhand would mean something that you're not really driving the point on that or focusing too much on it. And I think this is the last one. In the back burner is in a corner with little to no attention. So I think Rosie mentioned that she left the project there of the story in the back burner for a little bit. So it was not something that was holding her entire attention for a while. It was just something on the back burner for her to pick up later. And yeah, so that was it for our expressions. Rosie, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I just didn't realize I said so many. I hope everyone understood me okay. But yeah, back burner. And I would say about crash course, it's not an actual course like in school. It's like Like I went to a job and I had to learn everything very quickly.
Mhm.
That's like a crash course. That was not
Yeah.
anything like official from a university or something.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was
Absolutely.
awesome.
That's great. And don't worry, like most of those things, it's not that people wouldn't like understand you, but mostly just something that we need to see it to actually like incorporate in our own vocabulary. So you're all good there. So I think we're coming to our final goodbyes here. I just wanted to thank Rose so much and thank everyone who's watching as well. We're creating a great circle here of connections. And if you're wondering how you can be one of the people here on the stage to talk about our guests, it's very easy. You would just have to be a member of the Redhook creative community, and then it's free to participate. You would just have to have the, a comfortable level of English, so you feel comfortable bringing your questions to the stage, and then just having the availability, which we would work with you. So yeah, our objective here is always just to learn and keep practicing and networking. So it was so great to meet you, Rose. If you have any last words for everyone who's here and for everyone who's watching, that would be wonderful.
No, just thank y'all so much. This was really, really cool. And thank you for all your amazing questions. I loved all of them. I love talking about being creative, so could do it all damn day. But yeah, no one be a stranger. If you're watching, anyone here, please don't be a stranger. I'm here to talk or chat or hopefully see you in New York one day, maybe.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'll see you all on our next meeting next week.